Live.
And let's hear from it, Nis.
Welcome to Project Sanity. Kind of a special edition in which I'm 6 hours away over in Denmark in the middle of the night, uh, and in which the rest of the team is spread all across the United States. Today we'll be talking about the UK's referendum on the EU, some big news on Volkswagen, where they're going, in which direction they're going with their cars in the international news segment, and we're going to hear a lot about the past week's developments with the uh, the Democratic primary, Bernie Sanders, his meeting with Hillary, and other news that have been happening. And in our segment where Dave Coennen, Field to Burn TV, is bringing us even more up-close news about the California primary. We'll be hearing more about the the expose that he's been putting together piece by piece about the poll workers and the instructions they've been given, and how people have been given a set of instructions that they've taken with them to the polls, and which has resulted in people not getting the ballots that they were uh, entitled to get. This and more, and in just to keep it all thematic concerning the election, we will be joined by Brandon, also known as a BS Opinion in the YouTube chat, who will be giving us some in-depth knowledge about the Electoral College, the electoral system, how the math works, and how the Green Party, in theory, in the 20 plus states that they are active in, they actually, by just winning those states, could win enough to win the presidency. So more about that in our second hour. And we are hoping, if it doesn't run too late, we're hoping to be able to bring you Bernie Sanders' address to his followers and showing that live on this stream. So without further ado, let me pitch it to Richard, and let's start out with the news.
Yeah, thanks, Nis, for joining us all the way out there from Denmark and in the weird time zone. And I know you got a lot on your plate over there. You're going to be back up and working, taking care of things right after the show, pretty much. So thank you again for taking the time out and helping us out. And I want to just welcome everybody to Project Sanity as well. And I want to thank Benjamin Dixon channel. And if you haven't subscribed, make sure to subscribe. I just want to thank him again for letting us use this platform, and I will go ahead and get me on screen as soon as I find. There it is. So Nis, thank you again. And on the news from domestically, there's lots of headlines out there. Some of the ones I wanted to cover are some of the ones that maybe getting a little distracted from, I guess. So the first one off the top of the bat I wanted to cover was many people have probably heard that the Senate passed a defense spending bill. Included within it was women being able to register for the draft and or being forced, depending on, I guess, how you perceive that, since as a result of being declared capable of filling combat roles, it was, in some people's perspective, the natural conclusion that then they would also register for the draft. Besides that particular portion where Ted Cruz argued against it, it's basically arguing that it seemed unnatural. There were a variety of other aspects of that much larger $600 billion, to be rough, to give you a better estimate of how big this bill was. About $600 billion in spending was being authorized, and so there were many things within there that were getting fought about. NPR has a decent write-up about it, compiling a lot of information from both Associated Press and some other reports, Washington Post, and you can find the link down in the description beneath the video. It may not be there right now because it was an article I was just able to get together right as before we went live on air, but it'll be there if you're watching this at a recorded time later. Anyway, is within that defense bill that passed about 85-13, according to reports from the AP, that Obama has threatened to veto, but with again a margin of 85-13, that doesn't necessarily matter. That's more than enough to get an override if he does veto it. He said the reasons why he wanted to veto was that it would prevent him from closing Guantanamo Bay, and it looks like that there was also reports to deny its request to shut down surplus bases and limit the size of President's National Security Council, according to the AP. And so beyond that, there were people fighting about what was missing. One of the things that was called for as being missing was an amendment supported by or proposed by Republican Mike Lee out of Utah. And when you hear Republican Mike Lee out of Utah defense spending bill, you're probably wondering what it was that he wanted in there that got shut down. Ironically enough, the provision that he wanted in there was, and that the Senate wouldn't bring to a vote, was basically calling for an amendment that would stop the U.S. federal government from being able to detain U.S. citizens, not immigrants, not people that had traveled recently or anything like that, but just a standard U.S. citizen. You or me could be this person indefinitely. Essentially, he wanted to put an amendment in the defense bill that said that the federal government would not have that authorization, or would explicitly be prevented from being able to do that probably more precisely. You can find the information at his website as far as the details of it. Possibly not out of a traditional venue or spokesperson, but I think it's something that's worth looking into. A while back, there was arguments about using drones to kill U.S. citizens, often, whether they're in foreign lands, and then whether that could ever be used in the U.S. What we have right now is indefinite federal detention, similar to basically you could theoretically legally be snatched up off the streets and put into Guantanamo Bay. The system might have to eventually account for you or explain why you're there, but it doesn't necessarily have to be charges. And so that's something I think people could look more into. Among other things in the bill were, let's see here, we had one, I know John McCain is in headlines right now for saying that Obama was directly responsible for the Orlando shooting, which we'll talk a little bit more later about. Those comments, I think, are reprehensible, but at the same time, this is the same person that opposed Martin Luther King Jr.'s holiday in his state. So I look at his perspective through a contextual lens where I basically just don't listen to him unless it's about military conflicts, and then mostly it's just about how we treat prisoners of war or the humane aspects of war, as far as trying to be as humane as we can. At least sometimes he'll be one of the people on the more hawkish side that says something about, let's not try to harm innocent people. Along those lines, the thing that he got pretty heated about was an amendment to offer more U.S. visas to Afghan interpreters who assisted the U.S. military and during the conflicts in Afghanistan. So essentially people that were on our side interpreting for us in the war, basically filling a combat role, as far as I'm concerned, being on the front lines interpreting between, not to mention interpreting between people that would not necessarily be supportive of their being associated with the United States military. So they put their lives on the line to help us in our effort justly, whether what we were doing was the right thing or not. So I think letting them in is probably the right thing to do. I'm commentating here, so but anyway, that's what McCain argued about. In particular, Kirsten Gillibrand got upset, was frustrated, that blocked her effort to pass an amendment reforming the way the U.S. military handles sexual assault cases. So that was regarding whether sexual assault charges went through the chain of command or how they went through, whether they went through independent reviews. And there's a long history of that. Go ahead and look more into that if you're interested, regarding the reporting of rape and sexual abuse in the military and how it gets handled using the chain of command versus independent checks. Other headlines, we have about 5 Sanders Democrats won, according to a report out of theprogressivebrief.com by Adam Hall, in their local primaries. Some of the ones were California's 3rd District's Ron Veresta, a self-described BernieCrat or something along those lines, community organizer, defeated his opponent, Dr. Max Gorn. He was early supporter for Bernie, and he's going to be at the national convention representing him as a delegate. So go ahead and take a look at him if you're in the area, or if you're just interested in helping support or elect more BernieCrats. He's in California's 45th district, taking on Mimi Waters in a heavily red area, though. So I might have missed something there, so I apologize if my note is off. But one of the themes that I've noticed through these BernieCrats, and you can go to theprogressivebrief.com to get a full list of who won, who the candidates were, and which districts there are. Several of them are in California, which runs top 2 primaries. So in some of those, they were primarying against a Democratic incumbent, a Republican incumbent, or they were running against one of them. Sorry. Beyond that, the one in particular the theme that they had was that they were running in red districts, the ones that were successful. So they were coming in second against a Republican opponent in a red district, giving some hope that they could possibly come through, but they're usually doing well because the Democratic Party at large has given up on that district, conceding it to Republicans. So one of the interesting ones that came out of that story, I think that's important to draw some attention, is in California's 49th district, which is situated between LA and San Diego on the coast, with Camp Pendleton's Marine base right in the middle of it, is Doug Applegate, who was endorsed by the Vote Progressive California organization, and he's going to be going against Darrell Issa in the general election. They finished neck and neck in the what's in California is a top 2 finisher primary. So Issa won with 51%, but Applegate was right behind him with 45%, with a no-party affiliation candidate pulling in 3. So Darrell Issa, if you're not familiar, he's been involved in a lot of the investigations on Capitol Hill, and has a reputation. So go ahead and look more into Issa if you're interested. It's a race that the progressive candidate that supports Bernie Sanders and would support his agenda at the congressional level could win, and it would be replacing a strongly disliked character from the Republican side, even on the Hill and off the Hill. And so that does it for that report. The next thing I wanted to mention was the People Summit. At the People Summit, we have basically, it's going on this weekend in Chicago, and it's going to be bringing together activists committed to different kind of agenda, basically a people's agenda that can enhance and expand issue campaigns and hold all elected officials accountable to popular demands for justice and equality, according to their website. Also on the website, it mentions the summit itself will include workshop sessions devoted to key issues such as Fight for 15, mass incarceration, criminal justice reform, voting rights, expanding democratic participation, attacks on Wall Street speculation to fund human needs and jobs, climate justice towards a sustainable economy, improved Medicare for all, and a fight for free and debt-free higher education and secure retirement. So I think if you're a Bernie supporter, or if you're a progressive and you've been following this channel or this show, then it's probably something you want to keep an eye out for. And you can actually watch it live. They're going to be doing a live stream from their website. You can find that at the People's Summit, and it's .org, and then /live stream to go to the live stream, or just .org if you want to check it out. But they're speaking on those things that I mentioned. Also, I should also mention securing retirement through expanding Social Security, and also ending HIV/AIDS, achieving constitutional pay equity for women, and ending deportation and support for Dreamers, among others, and so many other issues. And some of the guests are going to be Naomi Klein, author, social activist. They're going to have Tulsi Gabbard, Congresswoman, Hawaii 2nd District, the one that stepped down from the DNC to support Bernie, and I think possibly should be the new DNC chair. Roseanne DeMoro, sorry if I'm mispronouncing that, Executive Director of NNU. Sean King's going to be there. Arturo Carmona, who is the National Deputy Political Director for Sanders' 2016 campaign. And there's going to be Kashama Sawant, who is a Seattle City Councilwoman out here in Washington State. And Nita Turner's going to be there, Van Jones, and so many more people to list. tune in all weekend. The schedule's online at thepeoplessummit.org, and you can watch the live stream at peoplesummit.org slash, let's see here, sorry about that, slash live stream. And here we go. And so moving on to the next one, apologize if we're getting any confusion here. I will get in some messages from the back room, so I'm just trying to sort that out. I'm not sure. It says the split screen's gone, but I think we should be all right. Like, it should be just me on screen, or am I should be watching the stream as well, but I just only have so many windows open. If I can find our link. Nis, if you want to just hop in and talk about some of the news stories we rattled off there while I work on this in the backside.
Okay, so let me just say that the stream is fine. It's just for the purposes of being able to see what's going on outside of watching the YouTube stream. But in any case, to talk about the news, I mean, it's hard for me to even realize that shootings in the United States has become so prevalent and so common that a couple of days after 50 people has been shot, yeah, there's some Facebook pick batches and there's some Twitter pick batches up there, and there's of course a trending topic on Twitter and Facebook, but other than that, it's like, okay, on to do business.
Yeah.
If 50 people died in any sort of whatever in any other country, I should say in most other Western countries, there would be immediate actions. There would be emergency powers poured onto whomever was in charge of whatever that could do something about it, and then stuff would be done. And it's amazing to me that people are likening people saying, okay, so people in this country seem to get upset, and when they get upset they try and kill other people, so we should make it more difficult to kill other people, so let's restrict assault rifles. And then people go, oh, but it's not the assault rifle's fault, it's like blaming a drunken driver on the car. No, it's not.
Yeah, I was going to get the last story I had before we got a little off track there was about the the best effort that we were able to mount in our country regarding trying to have a tragedy and make sure that we use that freshness to remind us why it's so important to do something about it and to actually try and do something about it. So what we had was a Democratic filibuster with several participants, and it was about 15 hours long, putting it about ninth in length of filibusters, and it comes, like you said, on the tail of 49 people dying and many others being injured in Orlando, and which I haven't commented on it publicly. It's a tragedy, I should say, and it's truly unfortunate that we've gotten to this point where something like that is happening before we decide that it's time to stand up for 14 hours straight, if that's what it takes to shame or force people into acting on this. There's a lot to unpack with what happened there, though, and we didn't set that time aside. Perhaps next week that'll be a better time. Also, it'll be less fresh. So my condolences to the families if they by any chance happen to stumble across this video, and anybody that was impacted by that tragedy. So that's all I want to say on the tragedy itself. But regarding the filibuster and our best effort, there's an interview with Caroline Fredrickson, who's the president of the American Constitution Society for Law and Policy, on Democracy Now! Check that out if you get a chance. It talks a little bit about how there's the perspective that Democrats could be asking for, or people that want sensible gun reform could be asking for more than they're asking, but also kind of a sense of futility among the likelihood of it getting passed. And so with that, that was it for what I had for domestic headlines. So we can check on the audience or take it from there, Nis.
Yeah. Uh, my condolences and heart goes out to the families and friends of the people who were murdered and the people who were injured, and to not only have to go through that, but at the same time then watch the commentaries that goes on from far-right Christian churches saying, yeah, that's God's justice and vengeance, to Islamophobes going, yeah, that's because this religion is violent and it's anti-gay people and intolerant, and while at the same time you have a pastor saying that Hurricane Katrina was God's justice against homosexuality in the United States. And so my heart goes out, and I really just try and tune out as much as the BS as you possibly can, and just surround yourself with loved ones, surround yourself with people who support you, not with, and yeah, pay as little attention to the commentators as you possibly can. I'll just, on that note, find my rundown, and yeah, so there's no segue that in any way can provide respect or context, respect to the brief of the Orlando shooting. So I apologize for us not having more time at this juncture in it. I'll see if we can put in more time to talk about that horrendous action.